I do a lot of marriage-based green card applications for adjustment of status in the US or consular processing if your immigrant spouse is outside of the US. And today I'm going to be discussing all of the basic requirements for adjustment of status in the United States, because there's a lot of confusion about what the exact requirements are. Just the other day, I asked ChatGPT, what are all the requirements for adjustment of status in the US? And it gave me some incorrect information that, like, generally speaking, would really mess some people up. And it might have just been because my prompt wasn't specific enough. I had a similar issue the other day when I was just trying to get a refresher on what the waiver requirements are for criminal inadmissibility, and it was like totally wrong. I thought I would make a video on this exact topic to help people out who are interested in getting married or already married, and they just want to generally understand if they're eligible, what the requirements are. So this video is for you. So the first thing is that if you're gonna be filing an adjustment of status application, the petitioner, the American who's filing a petition for you, should be a US citizen. Currently, if they are a permanent resident petitioning for you, you might not be eligible for adjustment of status. I actually just did a video specifically on how preference category petitions, which means if your spouse is a permanent resident, that would be considered a preference category petition, how there are additional requirements such as the immigrant spouse must be in a valid non-immigrant visa status, and you might not be able to file the I-485 application, the green card application, at the same time as the I-130. So if you haven't seen that video, check that out. If you have no idea what I'm talking about when I say immediate relative or preference category, or if you are a permanent resident trying to file for your immigrant spouse, it's a good idea to do some additional research or just speak with an immigration attorney before you waste a bunch of money filing the green card application and just throwing $1,400 out the window and possibly ending up getting your spouse into removal proceedings if the green card application is denied. So just a quick tip right there. The first real requirement, other than to have a US citizen spouse, is that the marriage must be valid. I'm not gonna spend more than a second on this because I assume that the marriage is valid if you're watching this video. If you're trying to get into a fake marriage, super bad idea. I've done a ton of videos on all the risks associated with fraudulent marriage-based adjustment of status applications. The TLDR is, it's not as easy as you think. The risks are extraordinary and it could really ruin your entire future in the United States. All right, so the main problem a lot of people run into is when it comes to eligibility of the foreign spouse. So the foreign spouse is in the US, but if they entered without inspection after April 2001, and the reason I have that date as a cutoff is because if they entered before that, they might qualify for an exception, not always, and it's called 245I. But if they entered after April 30th, 2001, and they entered illegally or without inspection, they might not be eligible, and they probably are not eligible for adjustment of status. The only exceptions would be if they qualify for parole or some way to fix their illegal entry. One of the easiest ways to do that right now is if you have a family member in the military, like a spouse or a child in the military, they can apply for military parole in place to just fix your illegal entry, and then that might end up making you eligible for adjustment of status in the United States. And the other main requirement is that the immigrant spouse not be inadmissible. Inadmissibility can refer to a lot of things, but the two main things that I see are criminal inadmissibility. Certain crimes can render you inadmissible, and then you would need a waiver to fix that criminal inadmissibility, or fraud. If there was any prior fraud in any immigrant benefit that was ever afforded to you, whether you lied on the tourist visa to enter the United States, or you previously engaged in marriage-based immigration fraud, or you misrepresented something on any application intentionally because you just thought they're not gonna find out, I don't wanna complicate things, I'm just gonna say this. That might totally mess up your case, and you would possibly need a fraud waiver. And by the way, these waivers are not always easy to get, and specifically like a fraud waiver would be pretty difficult for most people. So just be careful. If you need a waiver, you should definitely speak with an immigration attorney before you file your case. Another requirement for the immigrant spouse is going to be a medical examination. The US citizen petitioner, the petitioning spouse, doesn't need a medical examination, but the beneficiary does. And these medical examinations, recently I've seen a bunch of cases get messed up because the physician failed to properly provide the polio vaccination requirements. The rules changed last year, and some USCIS civil surgeons, the doctors who do these medical exams, didn't get the memo, and USCIS now is taking issue with a lot of those medical exams. It's not denying cases, but it's delaying a ton of cases where you get to the interview and they say like, everything's good, we believe the marriage is real, you're eligible, but your medical exam is deficient, so you need to get us a new one, and that'll end up delaying the green card by a couple months. Another thing is I did a video on this. I recently had a client drug tested during the medical exam. This was always a possibility, but historically it didn't happen. But now it appears to be happening more and more. So you're supposed to be honest with the physician, but if you end up testing positive for THC or something, it could really mess up your case. The forms that you need to file if you're eligible for a marriage-based adjustment of status, I'll just repeat them quickly for people who are really new to all of this. This is a video for beginners. Is you're gonna need the I-130 to begin the family petition. The I-130A is the spouse supplement to the form. The I-485 is the green card application, and the I-864 is the affidavit of support form. These are the bare minimum forms, but I also do recommend filing an I-765, which is a work permit application. And in addition to the I-765, there's another optional form which I generally don't recommend right now. That's the I-131 for Advance Parole. I did another video specifically on this a week or two ago where I explained, like, if you think you might need to travel while the case is pending, file the I-131 just to have it in your back pocket, but it's risky to actually travel while your green card application is pending. You can be denied re-entry as a matter of discretion by the customs officer. And if they don't allow you back in, that would be disastrous for your case. We would have to transfer the I-130 to a consulate abroad. You might be separated from your spouse for 2 to 3 years while the case is transferring and then trickling its way through the consular process, especially as the Trump administration guts all of the State Department's resources. So that would truly be a nightmare scenario. Another big change we've seen in this year, 2025, is that every marriage-based green card applicant gets an interview. And I did actually 2 videos specifically on what happened step by step at this interview, including which specific questions the officer asked at a recent interview that I attended with some clients. So if you want to know exactly what happens at the interview, watch that video. I posted it like 2 weeks ago. The general idea that I want to share with you is that if your marriage is in good faith and you've been continuing to save evidence of it, and you prepare with a lawyer before you attend the interview, you really have nothing to worry about because it's a good faith marriage. You just need to be careful not to answer any questions that you don't know the answer to. If you don't know the answer, say, I don't know, and explain why you don't know the answer. It'll be okay if you don't know the answer to a question. It will not be okay if you answer the question and you're guessing. That could totally mess up your case and result in something called a Stokes interview, where they schedule a second interview like 1 year into the future. They separate the spouses and they interrogate each spouse in a hostile manner to look for differences in their responses. Hopefully, no one watching this video is at that Stokes interview stage. So if you are at that point, you definitely need an immigration lawyer to assist you because the Stokes interview is a complex process. After you attend the interview, which is the last stage of the process, if all goes well, usually within a few days, oftentimes the next business day, you'll get an approval notice for the I-130, electronic approval notice, and for the I-485, saying both cases were approved. And then usually within a month of that, the physical green card arrives in the mail. If you're interested in knowing what other evidence you need to prove you're in a good faith marriage, check out my other videos. I've done a ton of videos specifically on this topic where I go through it step by step, how to prepare it, how to submit it, how to update it when you attend the interview. If you're interested in learning more about family-based immigration, you could always schedule a consultation directly with me. I would love to go through your case with you to discuss your eligibility, the probability of success, whether it's a good case or bad case. Some people consult with me even though they don't don't want to hire a lawyer, that's okay too. I want you to get as much value out of the consultation as possible. So if you do want to consult, my information for consultations is in the video description below. If you're just interested in learning more generally on YouTube, be sure to subscribe. I do a couple videos on these topics each week, and I'll see you guys next time for another video.